title Head of ARC Products and Sales. And as mentioned, ARC was developed for and by the Washington Post, and now it's available for other media. Yep. Here's Matt.
There we go. All right, thanks a bunch, you guys. So I'm Matt Monahan from the Washington Post, and I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of what's happening at the Washington Post, and then what we've done inside of our CMS as a result, and then how that's being incorporated into what we offer commercially to other publishers. So I'll explain a little bit about that. So, where do I hit this? There we go. So number one, obviously inside DC right now, it's a busy time, right? There's a lot going on for our newsroom. There's plenty to report on. And so, I'm going to spend a lot of this presentation talking about technology and talking about the CMS that we've developed and the tools that we built for our newsroom. But what I want everyone to kind of keep in mind about what's happening inside DC is, the context of what's going on inside our newsroom that basically influences the products that we develop, right? So, right now, I think the core mission of what our newsroom is working on has never been more important than in the past, right? So, the past year and a half basically has made our newsroom more focused and more busy than they've ever been. And the context switching, the constant work for the newsroom, the tight deadlines has made it like so much more important that in the technology that we build for them inside the CMS, we need to be able to encourage speed and flexibility. And so this context, this busyness, this kind of execution of the core mission has made it more important than ever. That we really nail it on the technology side. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking about that. So obviously, the history of journalism is really, really important to us. But what's good to know about the Washington Post is that we see ourselves both as kind of a media and technology company. And so what I'll spend a lot of time talking about today is the challenges that we're trying to solve in technology and what's really strategically important to us. So the first way to think about this is when we think about what we need to support inside of our CMS and how we reach our audience, we think of two angles to this, depth and breadth. Depth, number one, for our highly engaged users means that we need to be experimenting in new platforms, right? Virtual reality, augmented reality. These aren't necessarily these platforms where there's a ton of readers, right? This isn't something that's mainstream yet. In many cases, the hardware is not fully mainstream, devices aren't necessarily supported, but we know that in order to support the audiences 2 or 3 years from now when it does become mainstream, we need to start experimenting now. We need to know what kind of content we're going to create in that space, and we need to start building the software to support those pieces of content. But still, the bread and butter for us is there at the bottom, right? It's the breadth. It means reaching readers wherever they are and across as many platforms as possible. And this presents a real big challenge for our newsroom, and I would guess for many of your newsrooms as well, right? Because it's no longer true that you're just producing stories for print and maybe for your website, right? You're producing it across a whole bunch of platforms. Probably most of you guys have some sales deck, that your sales team goes out to advertisers with. It looks like this, right? With a phone and a tablet and a watch and your website. Everybody has a slide like this. But the key thing for us now, the thing that we always remember inside the Washington Post is this right here, this is table stakes. It's the bare minimum that you need to do inside a newsroom these days, right? Being on just kind of all kinds of different devices like this with, a native app and a website, that's the bare minimum that you can do today in 2017. And so for us, the technology mission that we're trying to support inside of our CMS is making it as easy as possible to distribute our stories, not just across these platforms, but in reality across many, many other platforms where our readers are as well. Right? So it's not just your website, not just your apps. It means you need to be reaching your readers on what we think of as basically distributed platforms, Facebook Instant, Apple News, Google AMP, but also kind of less common platforms that you may not think about as much. You might need to have your video on set-top boxes or over-the-air platforms like Hulu, or new social networks where probably you haven't engaged with your readers as much before, like Snapchat or Instagram. This is super important for us, and I'll give some specific examples, but keep in mind, again, the context of what's happening inside the newsroom. Number one, for us specifically in DC, it's a very, very busy time, but then number two, the journalists are being asked to do more than ever before, right? It's no longer enough that they're just writing a story. They need to be producing it across many platforms. And your editors and producers are being asked to do a whole bunch too, right? It's not just one version of the story anymore. So it presents kind of a unique challenge for technology. So number one, here's a good example. So basically, since February, the Washington Post has been kind of active on Snapchat. We were one of the first large publishing partners there. We were the first to do breaking news on Snapchat. For us, the monetization story is very weak. It's all basically about reaching a new audience, and in this case, a young audience. What we're thinking about there is how do we develop an audience that maybe isn't as familiar with our brand right now, but in the future, they should be, right? And maybe in the future, we can actually turn them into paying, subscribing readers. But producing content for Snapshot is very difficult. They have their own CMS. It's not enough to just take your regular video content and somehow try to make it work for Snapchat. It actually has to be pretty particularly produced for that platform. So it requires a special skill set in your newsroom. It requires use of different technology. And it probably doesn't integrate very well with your existing CMS. So it's extra overhead. And then Apple News is another example. In this case, it's a big subscription driver for us. If you have kind of an Apple device and you swipe to the left, that's where you'll see under Apple Spotlight articles listed out that if you do a good job of playing on Apple News, you can link directly into your content. The trick there is it doesn't take you into your website. It takes you into your story on the Apple News app. So this is, again, one more platform where you need to be active, one more place where you have the opportunity to produce your story in a slightly different way than you would for your site. But again, it adds extra overhead for your newsroom. A couple more people in the newsroom thinking about a different platform they have to produce for, extra work for everybody, but a real opportunity to reach readers and in this case, get them to subscribe. And then Facebook Instant is another example. We've been less active there more recently, although they've kind of been making a comeback offering subscription products inside of Facebook Instant, so there's the opportunity there for us to begin working with them there again. In this case, obviously, huge reach, and they have a pretty decent advertising product as well. But once again, in order to have our content there, it's the same story, right? It's extra work for our engineering teams and for our newsroom to think about how our content should appear there in Facebook Instant. And particularly, if you use Facebook Editions, which allows you to kind of group together a bunch of related stories or a package of stories you want your readers to consume, someone in the newsroom has to actually curate that selection of stories. Right? So just, again, extra work, right? I mean, if you do a print booking process as part of your daily newsroom workflow, it's just that all over again for a different platform. And you're probably not picking the same stories. And then you can go a step further, right? So fine, Snapchat, Apple News, Facebook. But now we have to start thinking about voice-activated devices. And actually, if I had this slide up to date, I'd probably use the Echo Show rather than just the auditory one. But this, again, is very different content that your newsroom needs to produce. In this case, you're doing something that's kind of like podcast, but you probably want it to be a little bit specifically tailored to this platform. And so you have to think pretty hard about how do you produce stories that work well on a device like this? And then if you want to go a step further and do like one of the news skills, then it's very specific work to this platform. And there's a really great opportunity to engage readers here. This is probably, if you remember that previous slide where I showed the pyramid of things that are maybe more on the cutting edge that don't have a ton of readers but are engaged deeply, and then at the bottom, regular articles. This is probably somewhere in the middle and becoming more mainstream. In the next year or two, many, many people will have this device in their house. And so large newsrooms need to think about how can they be present here? But once again, it's extra work. And so again, keep that all in mind. This is what we're thinking about as we develop technology is how can we make it easier to take the news that your newsroom is producing and get it out to these many different platforms? Now for us, there's a real upside to doing this, right? Because you might think, well, why, there's so many platforms, like what's the opportunity behind playing across all those different platforms? And for us, the results of the Washington Post have been clear. We've had huge domestic growth, and we attribute a lot of it to basically being available wherever our readers are. For us, that's super key. Obviously, there's plenty happening inside the newsroom, but we don't believe that we'd be reaching nearly as many people as we are right now if we weren't exactly where they are. They're not just coming directly to us on our website. And of course, many of these readers, previously it was desktop. This mix, I'm sure, is true for all of you. Most of them now are coming from mobile. So what we've been working on more recently at the Washington Post is a CMS platform. We built it first for ourselves. Tools for the newsroom to write stories, tools for them to produce those stories, to run a website, to budget in the newsroom. And then the last 2 years, we've started to make it available commercially for other publishers as well. And so that's a little bit of what I'm here to talk about. We run it basically as a hosted service for a number of other publishers. Right now we have about 30 plus customers. And we have several in Latin America, in Paraguay, and Costa Rica, in Argentina. And we run it as a hosted service all the way out to the CDN. The big idea here is basically that you don't have to operate an on-premise CMS. You have the tools that are available through your browser, and we maintain them. Inside, it's basically about a dozen or so different services, tools for the newsroom to use, tools for engineers to extend and build on top of for content testing, A/B testing, and commenting. And then in the red, this is sort of key, the tools that we use to distribute that content out to as many places as possible. Of course to the web, of course to your native app stack, but also to distributed platforms. That's Apple News, Google AMP, Facebook Instant, and then now some of these other newer platforms as well. So this is, for us, here's how we're thinking about this. This is the core CMS that we're offering right now. And what we're thinking about next is, what do we do in 2018? What do we need to focus on? And for us, overwhelmingly, what we've seen is we need to somehow reduce the workload of our newsroom. We need to make it easier for reporters who are being asked to do more than ever before. You know, in the past, a reporter just had to write their story and turn the copy, and today they need to act as producers. The editors, too, are doing more than they ever were in the past. So somehow we need to lighten their workload and make that job easier. And so we've come up with a few different technologies that over the course of next year, we're going to use to try to lighten the load of those journalists. Number one, we have a personalization technology called Clavis. We use this for delivering recommendations on our website. We use it for advertising personalization with first-party data. What we're going to do this year is use the same technology to actually recommend related content for reporters to put inside of their stories. So you can see as they're writing, what's happening is we're using natural language processing to pull out keywords inside the story. And this is a pretty common approach that, you know, personalization vendors take. You take out the keywords from the story, you map them to topics, and you can deliver personalized content recommendations. But we can use this inside the newsroom too, right? We know what a reporter's writing about, maybe after they've written just a few paragraphs. And using that information, we also know the topic of, you know, a photo shoot that your photo department went out and made. Or if you have some videos, we know the topic of what that video is about. And to a reporter who's writing a story, we can recommend those photos or videos to be inserted inside the story so that they don't have to search and spend as much time trying to find the right one. Or they don't have to send a request over to the photo department to try to find exactly the right selects to stick inside the story. It's a small task, but that adds up, you know, every single day to the reporter's workflow and to their workload, especially if they have to produce that story several different times for different platforms. You know, so inside our newsroom, we don't just produce one version of the story. For Apple News, we might produce a very slightly different version of it. And the reporter has to sit down there and find all those photos. Without technology to help them, it takes a lot of time and it all adds up. So this is one way we're trying to make that easier. Another example is trying to help them identify which stories they should focus on the most, right? So inside our newsroom, we're writing almost 400 original stories a day, right? So there's a lot of stories, it's tough to know exactly what to focus on. What we can do is we can use technology to predict which stories are most likely to go viral or become very popular. And so here you can see what we do is we surface it to them pretty conveniently inside the Slack rooms where they already are. We can set some thresholds, how popular should an article become before we let them know. And then using this information, we can alert them that, hey, maybe you should go back and take another look at that story. Maybe you want to write even more catchy headline, add some extra images in, promote it a little bit more on social media, promote it a little bit more on the homepage. The idea is, what story should we double down on? And you can see that, you know, versus just randomly trying to guess which stories will do best, in the blue, you can see using this technology, we can predict with better than 80% accuracy which stories are likely to become viral ahead of time. And here's another good example of what we're trying to do with this. So, you know, one thing that a lot of reporters spend time on, reporters and producers both, is kicking ideas around back and forth about what headline should I use for the story, right? Maybe they do it in Slack, maybe they do it in person, and they, you know, go through a few different ideas. What should I write as a headline? We can actually help suggest to them headlines automatically that they can choose from. And they can actually edit on top of them. We're not trying to make it completely automated. What we're trying to do is basically propose several different ideas for headlines that they can then edit in place, right? So rather than just trying to do it off the top of their heads, we can use technology to make that job easier. And we use a few different techniques to do it. We use a head trimming algorithm, something else called multi-sentence compression. You can see some examples of these different algorithms in practice, like this. So here it took some content from an article, the top paragraph, and then you can see some different examples of a headline that it wrote for it. None of these are the best headline, right? These aren't like a headline that you would immediately publish out. But from the reporter's perspective, it gives them a few starting points to start to write a headline around, right? A few different ways of framing that content. And what you'll see is if we combine this technology with the testing technology I'll show you next, we can quickly use the combination of automatically generated headlines with editorial control and testing to arrive at the very best one very quickly. Right, so we use this thing here called Bandito. And this is actually already out in production. A bunch of our customers use it right now. It's a multi-arm bandit testing algorithm, and the way it works is it's a little bit like A/B testing, but rather than waiting for the end of the test, you can actually find out in the middle of the test that one version of, say, a headline or a promo image is doing better than the other version. And before you even get to the end of the test, it'll start shifting traffic to the more successful variant. And so here's just like an actual example of it. So, we started with, for this story, one promo image and one headline. And then we wrote a slightly different headline, and you can see the click-through rate for that story went up slightly. And then, with that new headline, we added a new promo image that includes kind of a more dramatic human subject. And that finally increased the click-through rate almost threefold over the original one. So imagine if you pair this technology with Headliner, which can automatically suggest some headlines to you. And from the reporter's perspective, it makes it very easy to say, okay, here's a few headlines that are suggested to me. I'll edit them to make them actually acceptable from an editorial perspective, publish them out, use this testing tool to select the best one, and within maybe 20 or 30 minutes, I know which one performs best with my audience. And here's another example. This one has the same promo image for all. And this one is just 3 different headline tests, and you can see it was kind of the Trump quote that did the best by a lot. Last one I'll show you. This one's kind of interesting. It's the most recent thing we've done. This is built on top of the comment system Coral that we offer, which we built with New York Times and Mozilla. The idea of ModBot is a lot of newsrooms struggle with the workload of moderating comments on their site, to the extent that a lot of newsrooms now have cut comments off their site entirely because it's too much work. Either that or you outsource the moderation to some outsourced company right out overseas, which is expensive. So what we've done instead is built a technology where we can automatically, using AI and NLP, try to figure out which comments are the most and least acceptable. And you can see here kind of a diagram of how this whole thing works. We have our commenting system. We have a filter where we can remove obviously objectionable comments. And then we have a classifier system that tries to figure out how objectionable is this really, or how acceptable is it? And then we can set thresholds and a score to say, you know what, if it's above some threshold, we can automatically approve this comment. If it's below some threshold, we're going to automatically reject it. Now what we did was we started with a training set of 21,000 comments, and we used a machine learning algorithm to then say, okay, from this training set, let's see if we can make the algorithm automatically know which ones meet those criteria. And so then we tested that algorithm against a different set of about 4,000 comments. And what we found was the machine was basically able to arrive at the same prediction that an editor who was moderating comments was able to arrive at with about 88% accuracy. In other words, we ran that training set of 4,000 with human editors, and we ran that same training set against the machine. 88% of the time, they both made the same decision about the comment, whether to accept or reject it. And it looks something like this. Here it is kind of in a spreadsheet, just showing, there above is the ones that we automatically delete. Those are the ones that, it's a set of comments that fall into the lowest percentile in terms of quality. And then at the bottom, the ones in the highest percentile in terms of quality that we automatically approve. What this means in practice is for your editors, we've basically removed about 80 or 90% of the moderation work that they have to do and let it be done by a machine. And just the ones in the middle are the ones that the human works on. And here you can see just a few examples of it. One that's been filtered out, and then several that use the classifier model to either automatically accept or automatically reject. So I think if you add all of this up, basically what we've been able to do is dramatically reduce the workload of sort of easy-to-do tasks that kind of add up for an average reporter or editor. And so much of what we're going to focus on in 2018 is incorporating these into the CMS technology so that, from a reporter's perspective, they can focus on what's most important, which is writing their story. And from an editor's perspective, editing the story and publishing it out. And the results for our clients have been extremely good. So Infobuy, which is our client in Buenos Aires, over the past now 15 months or so, they've more than doubled their traffic. They started with us at 18 million monthly unique visitors, and today they're at almost 45 million monthly unique visitors. And engagement's way up as well. And another good case study example is Globe and Mail in Toronto. In their case, it's a subscription-based site, and their main goal has been to dramatically increase engagement for their users. And using our testing technology, that's exactly what they've been able to do. They increased engagement on the site, they increased ad viewability, and they increased time on site as well. So that's basically what we're looking at in 2018, and And I think that's it. We'll open up to the next person. We do questions after this, I suppose?
I think.
Time?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll say thank you, Matt, and if we can hold, maybe jot questions down, and we'll ask them at the end, if that's okay? I'll leave this here. And now we'll have Jose Luis Gomez of Protecmedia, and a difference from ARC is Protecmedia has been one of the first, perhaps the first CMS, and he will describe where it has been, where it is now, and where it is going.
Gracias. Buenas tardes. Bueno, quisiera comenzar explicando el título de la presentación. He querido llamar a la presentación la tecnología en la redacción, quizás para diferenciarlo lo que en muchos foros internacionales se llama la redacción tecnológica. Y es que lo que se defiende es que los medios tienen que contratar matemáticos, programadores, informáticos para desarrollar ellos mismos la tecnología. Eso hoy día yo creo que no es necesario, porque lo que tienen que hacer los periódicos es contratar periodistas, que es lo que ellos producen. Un periódico no deja de ser una fábrica de contenidos y, por tanto, donde tiene que invertir es en la contratación de periodistas. Esos periodistas lo que sí van a necesitar es una tecnología que he agrupado en 4 pilares básicos. Creo que toda redacción tecnológica debería tener un buen CMS completo y global. Cuando digo completo es que afecte a todos los medios, a todos los canales. No tenemos por qué olvidarnos del impreso tan rápidamente, como se ha venido diciendo. Vamos a dotar este CMS de herramientas semánticas, de inteligencia semántica, que nos van a aportar valor en 3 líneas principalmente. Una hacia el interior, hacia la redacción, donde va a hacer el trabajo de la redacción mucho más sencilla, mucho más ágil, le va a dotar de un aprendizaje mucho más sencillo. Y otras 2 líneas hacia el exterior, donde nos va a mejorar la audiencia en 2 sentidos. Uno, que nos va a mejorar mucho el SEO, dándonos una audiencia potencial a través de buscadores mucho más amplia. Y otro, que sin cargar de trabajo a la redacción vamos a ser capaces de construir contenidos mucho más completos, haciendo que la audiencia esté más tiempo en nuestro sitio y teniendo muchas más páginas para visitar. La tercera herramienta, que es básica, va a ser ofrecer a la redacción información de lo que está haciendo la audiencia. Aquí he intentado distinguir Smart Data o datos inteligentes, porque son datos que tienen que estar pensados para la redacción, para los periodistas, datos que ellos entiendan. Y lo último, el último punto, el último pilar básico, es lo que he llamado fomentar el engagement. Hasta ahora, muchas veces los periódicos vivían del tráfico de la gente de la marca que nos venía a visitar. Después hemos intentado ampliar nuestra tecnología SEO para que los buscadores nos manden tráfico. Pero hoy día, en la era digital, hay que ir a buscar a la audiencia allá donde esté. Por tanto, vamos a tener que darle herramientas a la redacción para que sea capaz, sin sobrecargar su trabajo, de llegar al máximo tiempo de audiencia. Bueno, como decía antes, la primera pieza va a ser un único CMS. He querido poner esta diapositiva porque aquí mismo, durante la mañana, siempre estamos intentando olvidarnos de un gran potencial que tenemos en nuestras casas, que son los periodistas del impreso. Si alguien, cuando la audiencia tiene muchos sitios hoy donde informarse, si la audiencia va a nuestro medio es por la credibilidad. Una credibilidad en contra de las fake news, que también está muy de moda, que nos ha ganado esa marca. Creo que era Gabriela esta mañana de la fábrica de tabacos, donde decía que por qué nosotros mantenemos la marca. Cuando pasamos del impreso a uno digital no le hemos cambiado el nombre a nuestro sitio, porque lo que tenemos es un gran valor en nuestra marca y ese valor viene provocado por los profesionales que tenemos a lo largo del tiempo. Por tanto, desprendernos de ese valor humano que tenemos en la redacción del impreso puede ser una decisión de negocio, puede ser que tenga que hacerse, pero no debería ser una decisión que tomemos por la tecnología. Es decir, la tecnología no puede forzarnos a abandonar un potencial humano que tenemos, sino que tendrá que ser porque decidamos organizar nuestra redacción de manera separada el impreso del digital, organizarnos por temáticas, por sector, pero ya digo, la tecnología no debería ser causa de decidir la organización. Lo siguiente importante que tiene que tener toda redacción hoy día son un conjunto de herramientas de inteligencia semántica que nos van a, como decía antes, a facilitar el camino en 3 líneas principales. Una hacia el interior, hacia la redacción. Vamos a ver cómo la mayoría de las funcionalidades lo que van a hacer es hacer el trabajo del redactor más fácil, más sencillo, más productivo, y hacia la audiencia mejorando las cosas. He agrupado la inteligencia semántica en 4 principales funciones, aunque hay muchas más. La primera de ellas que podemos obtener de forma automática es un resumen de nuestra noticia. Un resumen que nos va a posibilitar fomentar esta noticia, por ejemplo, poniéndolo como reclamo en las portadas, como una descripción más exacta de la nota a la hora de subirlo a una red social, o también como una posibilidad de simular un rotulador a la audiencia. Es decir, si con las frases más importantes de la noticia las vamos remarcando según lee, vamos a conseguir 2 cosas muy sencillas. Uno, que el lector haga scroll para ir viendo las partes que le vamos subrayando, aumentando el tiempo en la página que pasa y también aumentando la visibilidad de la publicidad, porque nos va a permitir poner más publicidad. Otra de las cosas que nos va a facilitar la inteligencia semántica es extraer de forma automática todas las personas que hablan de esa noticia, de todas las organizaciones, de todas las localizaciones, empresas, marcas, que nos va a brindar la oportunidad de ligarlo a la publicidad patrocinada, como se veía antes, o también nos va a brindar la posibilidad de ofrecerle al lector mucha más información, muchas más páginas, dándole un contenido mucho más completo, lo que va a hacer ir fidelizando la audiencia. Por otro lado, ni que decir tiene que todos estos metadatos y todas estas cosas extraídas automáticamente también nos van a dar mucha potencia en los buscadores, haciendo nuestra audiencia posible mucho más amplia. El tercer punto que nos va a ayudar también la inteligencia semántica de cara a la redacción es obtener de manera automática información relacionada con ese mismo tema. En la redacción trabajan muchas personas, en la redacción no todo el mundo sabe lo que escribe el resto y por tanto podemos dejar a la máquina que busque otros contenidos que han escrito otros compañeros de la redacción. Con esto vamos a también darle posibilidad a la audiencia de tener mucha más información y una información mucho más completa. Por último, el cuarto pilar de la inteligencia semántica sería la catalogación del artículo en el mapa de conocimiento del medio. Catalogar un artículo no deja de ser un tema muy subjetivo. Si preguntamos a cada uno de ustedes dónde catalogaríamos una noticia, seguramente obtenemos diferentes resultados. Por eso, dejar a la máquina que proponga dónde debe estar catalogado va a simplificar, va a hacer un mapa de conocimiento mucho más objetivo y más homogéneo. También va a facilitar, de cara a la redacción, el aprendizaje del mapa de conocimiento. No tenemos por qué saber, los periodistas que llegan nuevos a la redacción, conocer todo ese mapa de conocimiento que tenemos. Por tanto, la inteligencia semántica nos va a permitir a la redacción construir contenidos muy completos de cara a la audiencia, donde va a poder, con el resumen, subrayar las partes, va a tener sugerencias de artículos relacionados y va a mejorar el análisis semántico. Todo esto con un entrenamiento progresivo, ya que el motor semántico va a ser capaz de ir aprendiendo. Bueno, como decía, todo esto hay que medirlo y hay muchas herramientas en el mercado que nos ofrecen muchísimo tipo de estadísticas, ¿no? Pero muchas veces esas estadísticas quedan secuestradas por ciertos perfiles dentro del periódico y no se las facilitamos a quienes verdaderamente la necesitan, que son los redactores. Hay que ofrecer a los redactores unas estadísticas no solo a nivel global del portal, sino también segmentadas por sección. Cada sección del periódico tiene que saber si el tráfico que genera o no. El redactor tiene que también tener información de cada uno de sus artículos, con un solo clic poder saber cómo se está comportando la audiencia en el artículo que ha escrito. Como decía, también hay que extender las estadísticas para que los redactores lo entiendan de una forma sencilla. Tenemos una estadística muy común que es el tiempo en página, que nos va a decir pues, cuánto tiempo está el lector visitando un cierto artículo, pero eso al redactor le va a decir poco. Lo importante es decirle si la audiencia verdaderamente ha leído su artículo o no lo ha leído. Es decir, mediante la combinación de la posición del lector, la velocidad de lectura y la longitud del artículo, se puede determinar si un artículo ha sido leído o se le ha prestado la atención debida a esto. Mostrarle al redactor información de este tipo en tiempo real le va a ayudar a ver cómo tiene que escribir las noticias, si ese titular que ha puesto hoy ha funcionado mejor que el titular que escribió ayer, si la foto que ha puesto o los cambios en la foto provocan ese tipo de cosas. Estas estadísticas no solo tienen que incluir el tráfico local, sino también cómo se está comportando en las redes sociales o si también activamos una posible evaluación por parte de la audiencia de cara al artículo. Bueno, hemos visto antes que la inteligencia semántica nos ha generado un mapa de conocimiento bastante extenso. Es decir, vamos a saber, todas las noticias sabemos de qué personas hablan, de qué temas tratan, de qué empresas, de qué zonas geográficas, etc. Bueno, pues todo esto hay que medirlo y dárselo también a la redacción. La redacción debe conocer en tiempo real cuáles son los temas. Todo ese mapa de conocimiento que nos ha generado la inteligencia semántica lo vamos a poder medir. Vamos a poder saber qué autores son los más seguidos de nuestro medio, es decir, qué autores nos traen más tráfico. Seleccionando cada uno de los autores, vamos a ver el tráfico que genera y cuáles son los artículos. Es una medida muy importante para el redactor, pero también para la propia gerencia, el poder determinar qué autores nos generan tráfico y cuáles no. Tener también entrelazado lo que es el CMS con la herramienta de estadísticas va a permitir ofrecer de un modo gráfico a la redacción cómo se comporta cada uno de los artículos en función de la posición que ocupa y, por tanto, poder tomar en tiempo real decisiones sobre el cambio de esas posiciones para ver si generan o no un mejor acogimiento en la audiencia. El tercer pilar que hablaba como herramienta básica va a ser las herramientas para fomentar el engagement. Comentaba que las audiencias, o sea, ahora no solo podemos vivir de nuestra marca y esperar a que el tráfico nos venga. Tenemos que intentar llegar a la audiencia allí donde esté. ¿Y qué significa eso? Significa seguir haciendo ediciones impresas, quizás más locales, haciendo ediciones más locales para llegar con contenidos más personalizados. Significa poder tener los mismos contenidos impresos en versión digital enriquecidos para poder dar a otros países donde no llegamos con la impresión. Tener que generar contenidos para todos los canales, los tablets, los móviles, los smartwatches, etc. No podemos olvidar tampoco otros canales como pueden ser las newsletters, donde tenemos una gran fidelización por parte de los usuarios. Poder decidir qué contenidos van a ir a una newsletter o no es importante. Tenemos que dar a la redacción también el control de poder enviar notificaciones push a los navegadores. Es decir, en caso de que suceda una alerta, poder notificar a mis usuarios de la forma más urgente este tipo de cosas. Tenemos que llegar a aplicaciones también para poder leer en formato específico, incluso cuando estamos desconectados. Ni que decir tiene que no podemos olvidar las plataformas de distribución. El redactor tiene que poder decidir qué artículos sube a Instanáticos y cuáles no, si queremos subir uno a Apple News o no. Hay que darle el control hacia ellos. Muchas veces cuando tenemos una gestión en las redes sociales no sacamos el partido total que podemos, porque podemos segmentar las redes sociales también. Es decir, podemos crear cuentas distintas en función de la temática para que nuestros seguidores puedan seguirnos en función de esos contenidos que les gustan. Podemos tener cuentas en función de los autores que publican. Entonces, como vemos, hay que ir a buscar la audiencia allí donde está. Y la redacción tiene que poder encargarse de todo esto sin un sobrecoste y sin un sobreesfuerzo increíble. Todos ustedes muchas veces, todas estas piezas las tienen. Tienen un CMS para el impreso, un CMS para la revista, un CMS para el web, un CMS para hacer publicaciones específicas sobre tabletas, tienen una o varias herramientas de analítica que le miden las cosas, tienen software que publica, es decir, tienen todo este tipo de funcionalidades. El problema es que muchas veces con estas tecnologías diferentes lo que tenemos es un Frankenstein tecnológico, es decir, una cosa construida con muchas piezas que no termina de andar coordinadamente. Lo importante es tener todo en la misma pieza para que entre ellos se hablen las cuatro cosas, porque vamos a ver que un cambio de contenido va a producir un cambio en la audiencia que vamos a medir. Ese cambio en la audiencia que vamos a medir puede provocar cambios de contenido para seguir fomentando, es decir, están estrechamente relacionados un pilar con el otro. Entonces, si todo lo tenemos conectado, podemos dar un paso más y es cruzar los datos. Podemos hacer anotaciones automáticas, ¿verdad? Porque sabemos cuándo se ha producido un cambio en el titular de la noticia y se puede marcar la hora exacta donde se ha hecho. Podemos saber cuándo hemos subido esa noticia a una red social en concreto y puede quedar registrado también dónde es. Es decir, todo lo que le pasa en la historia del contenido, tanto cambios de titulares, de fotos, de posiciones, todo lo que ha ido haciendo de publicación en las redes sociales va a quedar cruzado con las estadísticas. Por tanto, se puede analizar de una forma sencilla si una bajada en el tráfico ha sido responsabilidad de un cambio de titular aceptado o no, u otra posible. Bueno, para terminar, quisiera comentarles un caso de estudio real de un portal que puso en marcha estas tecnologías. Estoy hablando de un portal vertical dentro de un grupo que publica contenidos de salud. Esto podría ser aplicable no solo a un portal, sino a una de estas secciones que tenemos de nuestro sitio principal, pero que no le prestamos la debida atención por falta de recursos o por falta de tiempo. Bueno, hasta antes de esto era una audiencia normalmente profesional del sector, médicos, enfermeros, farmacéuticos, etc. Mirando las estadísticas se podía ver cómo accedía en horario laboral de lunes a viernes, etc. Y era un tráfico muy local al país de origen que era España. Podemos ver cómo España casi era el 60% de los visitantes únicos. Y se accedía desde el PC, desde la oficina, claramente. Después de poner en marcha algunas de estas tecnologías, lo que descubrió la redacción es que podían tener otro tipo de audiencia mucho más amplia, ¿no? Es decir, consiguieron multiplicar de forma esporádica el tráfico por 42. Es decir, conseguían en un solo día más tráfico que en un mes y medio. Esa audiencia dejó de ser local, ya no era una audiencia solo española, donde tenía el 60%, sino que pasó a ser el quinto país muy por debajo de los otros. Claramente cambió el tipo de acceso, es decir, se accedía desde móvil y no se accedía en horario de oficina. Y todo el tráfico venía de redes sociales. Con esto lo que consiguió la redacción es cambiar su mentalidad y ver que puede llegar, si hace las cosas de otra manera, puede llegar a otro tipo de audiencia. Si titula de otra manera, puede dejar de acceder solo a un público profesional para también interesarle ese tipo de contenidos a otro tipo de audiencia más normal. Esto es todo.
Muchas gracias. We have about 10 minutes for questions, and while people go to microphones, I would start with two. One is the first question, and I'll say it in English, then I'll say it in Spanish. I'll pass this to you in a second. Is the maximum utility of your content management systems, ARC and Protecmedia, to integrate various homegrown solutions or to replace them? And two, what is the reaction in newsrooms to reporters and editors who have to learn all sorts of skills that aren't necessarily related to news gathering and news writing? Are they embracing this technology or not? And José Luis, lo pongo en castellano, ¿es igual? Okay, sí, ¿cuál es la utilidad máxima del sistema es para integrar soluciones artesanales o reemplazarlas. Y dos, el ambiente de las salas de redacción, si los periodistas y los editores están abrazando las nuevas necesidades tecnológicas o quizás manteniéndolo al arm's length. Maybe start with, here, I'll pass this to you, maybe. Either one.
Okay, so the question was, number one, is the maximum utility from integrating with your existing CMS or from using it wholesale?
Taking it in and then taking a little bit of what they already had and a little bit of this.
I see, yeah, sort of addressing what you were speaking about, like, I think, I mean, what we see commonly, at least with ARC and the customers that we have, is, you know, there's sort of a mix. We have customers who use the entire solution, and we have some people who use pieces. You know, in general, we try to present a unified kind of comprehensive solution with workflows that are sensible across the different tools. And I think for the same reason that you said that for the average reporter or editor, you know, you want those workflows to be very simple. You don't want to have to switch between tools to do things. At the same time, you know, we have customers that have sometimes very specific business cases where they've built some homegrown tools. So for instance, Globe and Mail in Toronto, they've built their own analytics and data science stack. You know, we have some similar tools for that, but they built ones very kind of targeted to their business. And so, you know, in some cases, I think it makes sense to build your own technology and then integrate it with the CMS. And I think it's just, you have to decide what's strategic for your business. I think that's the key. So sometimes I see among our customers or potential customers, you know, people are trying to decide, should they build something or should they buy something? That's a strategic decision, right? I mean, there's no reason to just build an average CMS. There's plenty out there that you can buy. But if there's something very specific to your business that you need to build, then it should be a strategic investment. And that's how we typically look at that. Maybe we address that question first and then the...
Bueno, en principio, nosotros cuando cambiamos sistemas editoriales, pues como cualquier cambio, no en todos los sitios es bien acogido. Siempre hay personas que les cuesta más que otros, pero al final siempre suele ser un éxito. La gente no pone pegas. Pasa parecido a lo que nos comentaba esta mañana Gabriela en Phyllis Morris, ¿no? Cuando la gente que estaba acostumbrada a liar cigarrillos ve que hay un producto nuevo y bueno, no quiere quedarse fuera de ese nuevo entorno, ¿no? Entonces intentan subirse y apostar por la nueva era digital. Por tanto, aunque haya gente que pensemos que en el impreso no es capaz de subirse al carro digital, hay que darle esa oportunidad, porque muchas veces nos llevaremos la sorpresa de que sí son capaces. No es necesario ser joven. Hay personas, como decíamos esta mañana, yo soy muy viejo para hacer eso, y eso no es así. Se puede perfectamente subir uno al carro digital.
Fabricio.
Fabricio Altamirano, El Salvador. Matt, I was in the newsroom of the Post a couple of, maybe 2 years ago, and I sat with you for a long time. And in that visit, you spoke of how many developers versus journalists the Post had transformed to when Amazon took over the operation. It was something like 3 developers in total when before Amazon, and it just exploded. Will you talk a little bit about that and give a view of the becoming a technology company? It really, that's what I see the Post having become, and what the road for all of us is in that sense.
Yeah, thanks. So, no, I think it's true. I mean, so before Bezos acquired us, we had a little more than 3 developers, but you know, it's changed the culture completely. And I have that slide there that's like, you know, journalism and engineering on this chart, and it's a little bit kind of marketing-y, but it is true that like we really think of ourselves now as a technology company in addition to a media company. And I think it's really important. I mean, it's not just a way to identify yourself. Like when we're recruiting, we make sure that we're only recruiting top engineering talent. And we pay the engineering talent what we think we can, you know, what we think it takes to actually recruit the top engineering talent. We do what it takes to retain those folks. And so, so I think, you know, having Bezos as an owner has changed that quite a bit. Certainly the culture of the company. And then it means that it's more possible to build some of these solutions and to invest in the right areas. So yeah.
If there are no more questions, Jose Luis and Matt would be available to the left as we go out, and we'll bring on the next panelists. Really enjoy it. Thank you very much.